It's time for the Dynamics podcast, and today's guest is former MVP and now Microsoft employee Murray Fife. He's the author behind books like A Beginner's Guide to Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Operations and a lot of other books. You should really go check out his Amazon page, and you should also check out this episode. Stay tuned.
This is the Dynamics Podcast, Episode 18, recorded August 22nd, 2017. Learning by Doing, with Murray Fife.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Dynamics Podcast. My name is Fredrik Sætre and joining me today is my always lovely colleague, Tommy Skaue. Hello, Tommy.
Hi, Fredrik.
How are you? It's not been a long time since we've talked, but yes, answer. How are you, Tommy?
Yeah, we did a podcast last week, and we're back again doing this podcast, and we have a great show with a really nice guy with us today.
Yeah, because we normally we should be on every other week. We tried to do a podcast, and then we didn't do one for 2 months. So I guess we're gonna just catch up to what we're lacking.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but this guy that we have on, it was actually the guy that we wanted to have on the first time that we wanted to do a podcast. We had him booked for that, but he couldn't make it. So, luckily, at the last minute, we got Dick Venning on, which was pretty cool. But now we finally got it on. And so we have to welcome our guest and the one and only Murray Fife. Hello, Murray.
Hey, everybody.
Hello. So, like a celebrity within the Dynamics community, with all your media publications and everything, there's not many people who actually write books. At least not as many as you do. The author of the companion books and everything. So we have to give you praise for being such a fantastic contributor to the community. And I think everybody's read your book, and if you haven't, they should go check it out. But that not me. I don't want to ruin your presentation of yourself. So please tell us who you are, what you do, and how'd you get there.
Okay, and thanks for the plug on my books, and I'll do a little bit more as well. But for those of you that I'm not currently spamming or marketing directly to on my books, then my name's Murray Fife, and I've been working with Microsoft for Microsoft Dynamics for about 8 years. So for some of compared to some of the people, sort of the consultants and everyone out there, I'm relatively new to it, but I sort of went out and I tried to make a splash by writing up everything that I could find, and I sort of turned that into a set of books, and we can talk a little bit about those later on. But as Fredrik said, I am a prolific publisher, but I'm not. It's not a Game of Thrones that I'm writing. So the books are a little bit simpler, and the plots are a little bit more predictable than you'd expect with some of the real books that are out there. But I think and I've got sort of like a system where I've got a type of book. Some initially the people were complaining or sent me comments. If you ever write a book and you want to just be brought down to earth, go to the comments section on the books, and they'll just bring you straight down and plummet, get rid of all of your confidence right out of the way. But when I started doing this, I wanted to do it a quick and easy way. So I actually published all the books using PowerPoint, and because I could lay it out. And then people sent me comments saying, "Oh, this book just looks like a bunch of PowerPoints put together." And I was saying, "Well, actually, it is." So that's how I'm doing it. So no shock around that. But to give you a little bit of background, so I said that I've only been working with Dynamics for about 8 years. I think 8 years now. And but before that, I worked for another software company. Something that I was doing at the software company, I was documenting things and sending it out to the customers. So when I started learning Dynamics, then I actually did the same thing. I documented everything, partly so that I'd remember all of the things, and then I started sharing that out, and I had started to get this sort of mass of documentation that then I could share out with more people. And I did that for a little while with some small things, and then I sort of embarked on a bigger project, which was a set of books that show people how they can set up Dynamics and how they could set it up from scratch, which was a really interesting exercise, partly because I learned a lot along the way. Because a lot of times you go out and you set up parts of things, or you've got different sort of features that you turn on. So I went out and created these sets of books that start off and allow you to show people how they could set up Dynamics right from the start, beginning with general ledger and then cash management, payables, receivables, all the way up to the high level modules, including HR and production and all of these other things. So that took me, I think it took me about 2 years to put all of them together, and for 2012, and gosh darn it, now this Dynamics 365, and I've got to do all of the books again and take all the screenshots again. But that's sort of what most people know me about or for, are those books that hopefully it sort of helps everyone out there learn a little bit. But they're not complicated books, and they're visual, and they've got a picture on every page, and they step you through everything. But I think that's what a lot of people need. They don't need a lot of the textbook style sort of guides. They need something that's a little bit more simpler for them to take advantage of.
Yeah, because it's a step-by-step guide for getting from A to Z, and because you have the on the other side, there's always like you have Scott Hamilton's books, which is a really deep dive into the ideas behind everything, and it's more of a conceptual understanding of what the module can bring. It's more for the consultants. But I've met your books out in the fields a couple of times, where the customer, you come into a meeting and there's a book on the table, and it says this the guide that you wanted to I think it was for you pretty early on for R3 for the warehousing. There was a couple of did you have a book for that?
Yeah, I had one book that was for WMS, because a lot of people. So one thing that really irks me is there's a lot of times I went to some of the consultants and I said, oh, how does this work? Like the product configurator or WMS or retail, and they say, oh, it's far too complicated to set up. Oh, you'd never do that. So I sit down and work through it and find the simplest way to actually do it. And then that's generally what the books are for. And one that I did create was for WMS, because everyone tended to overcomplicate it, and you don't need to. It doesn't need to be as complicated as people make it out to be. And
we had the guys from the warehousing team, Mirza Abdik and Lars Bo Christensen. We had them on, and they were trying to get a guide together on the help pages where you kind of would set up the bare minimum of the application, just so that they had some type of because it can be set up really, really complicated, and it can be set up really simple, and that's kind of basically what most people need, is that simple, and then they can kind of grow into the more complex configurations and learn that on their own. But once you have set up like the bare minimum of the module, you can get to work, and you can do a lot of building blocks on top of that, I think.
Yeah, and something that I've found is that a lot of the documentation that's out there, especially the help files and the on the doc site, while they're really good, and they do tell you exactly what you need to know. If you don't have sort of like a base level of understanding, then or that 101 level, then the documentation doesn't really help you that much. You need, like you said, Fredrik, you need that basic starting point, and then you can grow from that. And that's what I think people need. They need something where they can get the muscle memory sort of working for setting things up. You don't need to go out and set up like master planning right out of the gate. You need to understand a little bit about the inventory and sort of move up, and then you can go and do more, and you can learn yourself. And there's for me, I'm a very visual person, which is I think why I always took screenshots and to try to remember what I'm doing. And there's other people that are more analytical, and they need more words than they need screenshots. But for me, I'm just catering to other people like me that need to see exactly what to do. And also because of the way that I did it, it was actually a really easy way to do it, and partly lazy because I.
No, it's called being effective, right? Because if you
being efficient.
Yeah, because if you make it the process too hard, if you put too much into it, then you're gonna lack the content. And in this case, where it's so fast and rapid, everything's changing, I think you have to find kind of an easy way to do like the publications, like we do with this podcast. It's kind of the bare minimum that we can do for as little time and effort as we can, and we don't go through and cut out everything and analyze it. And I do that when I do these outtakes, but kind of try to just do the bare minimum, and then you can do more of that. And I forgo a lot of the frivolous things that you need when you publish, like editing and spell checking and some other things like that. So again, bare minimum along the way. I'm a low budget sort of production house, and I'm sort of more Mills and Boons. I don't know whether that reference is anyone understands that, or then more of the fancy books. So I can get the books out, and you're right, getting the content out is more important than having everything absolutely correct. Yeah,
because a lot of people get stuck. They get into they're so worried about having it perfect, and that by the time everything comes out, then it's too late. And like if you see some of the books out there for Dynamics 365, they're coming out like a year after it's been out there.
Yeah.
And then they have to change the names like 3 times along the way to the title. but that's beside the point. And it's more the speed with everything, how fast everything's moving. The speed of getting things out is more important than having everything sort of perfect.
Yeah, I heard the Dynamics podcast. That's the Dynamics 365 podcast, which is done by the CRM audio guys. Joe Lindstrom, the MVP for CRM, the old CRM now called Customer Engagement. But they did a podcast lately on good enough. Just when is good enough good enough? And I think that is, if you make it in this just to do publications, I think you have to do it good enough, and then you can be more in time with the releases, because it's moving so fast. When you have your book finished and ready, there's you'll be worried that they're going to split out the different types of the application, and suddenly you're not, everything that you put into it is no longer. So
I think of it another way, that all I have to do is take a couple more screenshots, and then I've got a whole new book that I can deliver out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there you go.
So, I've got a beginner's guide for Dynamics 365, or a beginner's guide for AX7, a beginner's guide for Dynamics 365 for operations, a beginner's guide for finance and operations enterprise edition, and I'll just keep on updating it along the way, and then there's just more books out there. So.
You also been active on the AXUG, doing presentations, and And did this actually, all your books and presentations, they landed you the MVP title? We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, because the AXUG, I love the AXUG, or really now it's the Dynamics user group, and I do actually have to thank them a lot, because I don't think I really talked about this, but when I was working for partner in the partner channel before I came to Microsoft, so I've actually only been at Microsoft for about 2 years, and the user group gives everyone a really good platform to present, and then that gave me visibility so that then I could become an MVP. And being a MVP is a great it's a great personal benefit, because it gave us all access to a number of different technologies and closer access to some of the people at Microsoft. And then that's by speaking at the AXUG, AXUG meetings, then it's just a really good experience, and it's a good thing to sort of give back to the community. And then from there, it just sort of snowballs when you get to that point. And again, anyone who's listening that doesn't belong to the AXUG or the Dynamics user group, or hasn't gone to any of the events like the summit, which is coming for us. The summit's coming up in October here in the US, and so that'll be a really good event. And then also in Europe, the summit's sort of built up, and that's, I think, maybe in its 3rd year next year, which is a great thing to go to. I was able to go to that year before last, I think, and Tommy and I caught up there. But so now, and also the good thing is I like to talk. So as you may have noticed, I'm always I'm really lucky, because they always want me to sort of do a presentation, and I've been doing a series of presentations for them for, I think I might be on like my 13th presentation for everything your grandmother didn't tell you about Dynamics 365. Because if your grandmother's like mine, she didn't tell me anything, so she kept it tied to her skirt on anything around Dynamics. But it allows you to, for those presentations, I actually talk about a number of different things, not just Dynamics, but how you can use it, and then things like Power Apps and the Common Data Service, and just from partly from a user standpoint, because it's I'm just like everyone else, sort of trying to understand all of these technologies and how you can use them and how you sort of put them together in the system. But yeah, the AXUG was a really good, user group was a really good platform, and also now it allows me to share more with them and teach them more about some of the direction that I'm learning about for the Dynamics product and all of the other products as well.
I bet you got a fan club out there, people who have attended your presentation. I remember sitting in on one of your presentation where you were doing like, was it 20, 40, or 60 or 100 tips on AX, and you was like, you can do this and that, but that's not the end of it. You can do this and that, and you kept going and going, and everybody was having a good time.
Yeah, I've done that for years. But the ironic thing is, usually it's 60 tips in 60 minutes on Dynamics or something like that. That was the main theme, and I generally only get to like 10 or 12. So everyone should feel cheated, but it's fun, because even if you've been using the system for a long time, then there's a lot of things that you forget or that you don't know about. It was I remember there was one thing, and I forget what it was, but watching a consultant do something in AX 2012, and I thought, oh, you can do that? And I'd been using it for like 5 years. And I thought, I'm such a dumbass. I should have known that. And then I started using it. So, but everybody can learn stuff, even small things. But then and to be reminded as well as of what's out there, and it sort of helps along the way. But yeah, the tips and tricks is usually, I think I did one last year for the user group, and they put me in like a horribly small room, and there were people. It looked like a refugee camp. There were all these people laying on the floor and all over the place. And,
yeah, I suspect that we should have those tips and tricks run very early on for everyone, even if you're. I mean, if you're an user of AX, you should have those, because I agree. I mean, I saw years after working with AX, you come back to the end user and you see they're not filtering the grid properly, they're not navigating the client properly, and well, by properly I mean efficiently, right? So that's some of what the tips and tricks are about.
The Tommy way.
Yeah, right, exactly, the Tommy way. That's the perfect way. So, but I guess you see the same thing, Fredrik.
Yeah, well, I actually do some training on like the core concepts of just using the application, no functional things at all, just how the application can do, like using queues and using the basic features like filtering and alerts and everything. The alerts are gone now, but yeah, so every things that you can take use of based on just any type of module that you're using. So there's a lot of good in the core. Just the client is there's really a lot of magic that can happen just by learning different things, like advanced filterings and these type of things that you can basically create business functionality out of just being smarter. And you don't have to do amendments and costly things like that. You can solve things by putting up a queue with a really advanced filter on, instead of like creating new new forms and these types of things. So I do that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and so sometimes people overthink things a lot, and or they have a knee-jerk reaction to say that they need to do a modification or a customization, and users are smart, and sometimes they're too smart for their own good, but they can do a lot of things. They can do reporting. They can if they understand what the system's capable of from these small sort of tips and tricks along the way, then they're so much more capable and productive with the system. And even with the Dynamics 365, so that the good thing about that is there's a whole slew of new things that are available in there, and really cool features along the way. Yeah, no alerts. Yeah, so everyone's just got to go
common
through
data service, and you can run things through the common data service. Or you can use Flow, and there's different tools to solve those types of things. And,
don't get me started on Flow. Flow's like my most favorite product ever. So
maybe we'll do that later on, because I really want to talk about your publications and what you have and where you can get them, because as I said, I've met them in the field, and the experience that I got was that you come into a meeting, and as a consultant you don't know everything, but suddenly they've read your book and they're up to speed, and you really have to be on your toes to kind of to not get you get kind of undressed in front of the customers. But on page 55 there's a screenshot of something that might solve this, and it's like, oh, there is. Could you pass me the book? So
you know, Fredrik, you can get all of those books yourself on Amazon if you want to. Just go to Amazon.com and look it up.
We like shameless plugs, Murray. So go ahead. Tell us what just basically what you said. You had a starter's guide, but you have more than that, right?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different things that or series that have they weren't planned, but they sort of happened, as with a lot of stuff I do. The and there's the configuration guides, a bare bones configurations guides, that set of 16 guides, and going from module to module to module. But part of what I wanted to do for that is, I see some people just buying sort of one of them, like payables or receivables. But as for me, the vision, and whether it comes through or not, is that you should, if you really want to understand the system, you want to start at the beginning and set up everything. Even if you're not a ledger person, then you should be able to go in and set up the general ledger and understand how the journals work. And then from there, if you move on to each of the separate books after that, or the modules, then you learn all the financials area, and then you can move to setting up products and understanding inventory and the management, then procurement and sales, and then everything else after that. And if you start at the beginning and move all the way through, then you should have a good grounding. You're not going to be an expert like the consultants. So because consultants go out and they focus on certain areas, maybe just financials, or even at a more granular level, maybe just the ledger and the setup and maybe costing around that. So the consultants that you work with tend to have the deep knowledge in this individual area, but having a holistic view, sort of like at this 100 level, I think is really, really useful for people to do. And it's good to hear that the customers are actually doing that and moving through. And so there's the bare bones configuration guides, and those are the ones with the orange colored ones, or the colorful ones. Then, and actually, if you scroll over a little bit, there's a really odd book, which is Wanda's Wicked Workshop. And I don't know whether you know a guy, Mark Polino.
I've purchased this one. This one I've purchased. Yeah.
Mark, this is a funny story. Mark Polino put out a book, and it was about Great Plains, and it was sort of like a really short just story. And she implements Dynamics GP. So I knew him, so I created this book, which is how she upgrades to Dynamics AX. But anyway, mainly just to irk him. But anyway, so
bedtime story.
So yeah, so there's that. And then I've got. We were talking about the tips and tricks earlier for the user group, and there's 3 books that I have for AX 2012, and then also another one, that's for the new AX, when the first name that we have there, but they were all these were all sort of individual sort of things that everyone should know, like how to use a workspace and how to go out and create a tile and expand them out. And as through this, you can see that everything's sort of in the same format along the way, and it's really, really simple. But for publishing, that's sort of what I went for. And so that's another series. And then there's smaller books, which were actually any of the books that are the blue books or the blueprints, then those were really the first books that I wrote, and maybe a little bit more care went into those ones. But a lot of them are part of the bare bones configurations guides, but they were, as I was researching things, how to set up costing, how to set up cost sheets, or how to go out and configure the retail so that you can use a point of sale. Then these are smaller books, but they go through all those steps. And even I had one there which was for service management. I said before, I asked people about service management, and they said, "Oh, it's horrible. It doesn't work." And then I sort of sat down and worked through it and realized it's actually a really good module. So everything that I learned along the way.
I think that is actually a good point, because when you get into a module, and we talked about this earlier, like the many of the customization that are done to the application is because somebody might think that the standard features are too complicated, right? So they go in and say, well, we will just create an add-on to that standard functionality to get something that is actually solved in this new module, but you don't have to use it. And then you start and build on and build on and build on top of that, because there we go, because you need new functionality all the time, right? So instead of like implementing a module and you think it's bad because you kind of don't know how it's set up and how you use it, you just look at it and when you don't understand it, it's just, oh wow, this is way too complicated. So I got to get that one actually, because the service industry is a module that, especially for the customers that we work with, is like super, but we don't implement that module because it's too complicated.
But I gotta ask, Murray, when you did your own investigation on how things work, like to prepare yourself for creating the book, did you have to go to Microsoft to get help, or did you figure out yourself, or how did you approach that?
There some of the areas I needed to get a little bit of help on for the service management and also the project accounting. I was working as a partner, and I was talking to one of the consultants, and I said, how does the projects work? And she sort of gave me an overview of it, and then from there I just sat down and looked at it, and then also set it up from scratch. The best way to learn what's required is to go out and just set it up yourself, not without any of the crutches that you normally have, where you have some of the data already set up and then you're just setting up smaller pieces. So you learn so much of what you really need by doing that and going through. And if you can set up a project or set up service management without having any of the groups or any of the codes set up, and then that's pretty much how I did it. And a lot of it's through trial and error. So you go through and you set something up, and it'll always take longer, and you set up too much, and then you just go back and say, was this really needed? Was this really needed? And then redo it again. So usually when I work through a process, I do it at least twice, so that I can really understand and have the simplest version of it set up. But I didn't, for a lot of the things, I already knew most of them. Financials, to be honest, I never really sort of dabbled with financials for a long time, but I realized that if I was going to embark on the 16-book sort of series, then I'd have to start with the general ledger and I have to learn it. So I sat down and sort of started to understand how everything works just by trial and error. And again, that's partly why a lot of the books are really simple, because I'm just trying to find the simplest way to get from A to Z without adding on all of these bells and whistles and all of these other things that you really want in a real implementation. So
right, yeah. So you started off with actually a blank system then, with no data at all, not the Contoso demo data or things like that.
Yeah. So when I sort of, if you look at some of the other guides, I'm going to redo them, but like production and the project management, and I think maybe the sales and marketing as well, those do start off partly with the Contoso data, so for the along the way. But from when I starting off at the beginning, then I went out, I didn't even create a new company, because there's all of this sort of baggage that comes along with it. I went and created a new petition and then had it completely blank. There was nothing in there, and then just built it up from that standpoint all the way up to having it up and running. So right. So that, I think, again, it's a learning process. It was a learning process for me, and then just because I have this all documented, then I can share it out and we can do more. But that one of the reasons I can do this, or a lot of people say, where do you have time to go out and to create these books? And the part of the thing is, a lot of it integrated into learning. So if you have to learn how to set up the any part of the system, if you document it along the way and have like a lab manual that has all the steps, then creating something that's useful afterwards is really easy. If you think of documenting or documenting steps as an afterthought, then you'll never get to it, because you'll always go to the next problem and again still end up with something that works, but not a lot of documentation along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that, because with AX7 there are so many new things to learn. It's a new platform, there's new technology. So when I approach a new thing, like how to do applying a hotfix on AX, this is a more technical thing though, but how to apply a hotfix, I started to look at it as I want to document how this is done. And it has helped me actually, because I was able to trace back where I did something wrong, and I could go back and look at the precise step that I went through. And also when I've been in contact with Microsoft support, I actually have a full audited list of steps that I've gone through so far, to the point where it failed. But I guess that's just something I have to live with. But and I also I haven't set up AX myself, but I know there are some catch-22s when you're setting it up from scratch. There are some things you cannot set up unless you have another thing set up, and they're code dependent on each other. Do you see anything like that when you're set it up?
Yeah, and that's partly why I started right at the beginning with the ledger, because there's if you look at some things like the project accounting, then you have a lot of the cost groups and cost codes need to be set up, and then they rely on other things set up in the lower level modules along the way. So you can't jump into the these sort of higher level sort of modules before you have them all of the other areas set up as well. But that's partly why I was talking through the process that I go through, where I do things twice. Then because I tend to, you find what the dependencies are, and then you just slot if you find that I've gone through all of this, but I can't do any more because this needs to be set up, then you realize that needs to be an earlier step, and you can and then you can put everything into the right order. And then when you do the final sort of documentation step, then you can go out and do everything properly, and you know what the dependencies are. But that's really the hard part, and I think that's why a lot of people are they're a little bit scared of setting up something from scratch, because they say that it's complicated, and they say that there's all these dependencies and there's so much work to do this. And if you know the steps that you need to move through, then it's really painless to go out and work through this and move through it. I think a gentleman emailed me. He went through I think 8 of the books, or the core operations, and then the trade books. And I think he did it. He timed it. He said it took him 14 hours, but that 14 hours to go out and set up an entirely new company from scratch, I don't think that's that bad. So, and that was with Ledger, and that was with all the products, that was with everything there. And if 14 hours is really just 2 days and everything's up and running. But again, it's not a production system, but it's a good enough system to start off and sort of understand along the way. But yeah. It's the dependencies that get you, because if you go too fast, then you can get into a rabbit hole where you just where all hell breaks loose, and you sort of throw your hands up in despair, because you realize you need to set up this, and then it says you need to set up this, and this says you need to set up this, and you think it's an unending sort of process of setup where you're blocked every time by something else, and that's frustrating. And I know that personally, where you sort of have to work through these things, or you get almost to the end and you can see the end, and then there's some quirk that you forgot to set up, and you can't work out what that changes. I've been there, and
like
everyone else,
missing a inventory posting setting somewhere.
Yeah,
something.
Yeah, or you don't. Yeah, or it's or Dynamics pops up with an error saying that it says the posting of $25 US does not match the intercompany posting of $25 US, and you say yes it does, and then it's because the posting profiles are not configured. So who would have guessed? So
but I think it's a valid point that by setting it up from scratch, you get to sort of perhaps see the underlying logic and how it's built up. You have to have, I guess you have, even though you're presenting a guide, step-by-step guide how to do it, you need to have some level of abstract thinking when you're thinking about this, so you can sort of understand what the underlying mechanisms and logic is. But together with that guide, you can get there. Because I see some consultants, they are too abstract. They don't talk about UI and buttons and fields and forms. They talk mostly about how the logic and the philosophy underneath is supposed to work. But mapping that with the actual UI, that could be a gap. And developers especially, they can become increasingly frustrated when they can't do their testing because the parameter settings is wrong and they don't have a clue how to do it.
Yeah, and again, if you're looking for the philosophy around setup in my books, then it's not there. So, but it's partly it's partly so that you can get the experience, because a lot of how to work through the system, because a lot of things, because I've worked on a couple of different ERP systems, and it's really what you really learn is the style of the system. Once you understand the style and the common formats or the common mechanisms that are being used throughout that, then other things sort of fall into place. If you and that was a hard thing for me moving to Dynamics, because it was a very different sort of structure than what I was used to with the other ERP system that I worked with. But you just have to embrace it and sort of work through it, and then it's almost like learning a new language that you have to immerse yourself or start using it more and more to really understand it, and then you can have after you have this 100 level sort of understanding of the system, that's when you can start saying, well, if we use this different costing method, then what would that do? Or if we change the setup, if we change the configuration, then how would that make things better? So again, it's that you start off, and everyone should have this very, very low level understanding of how all of the system works. Then you're equipped to answer the bigger questions, like how do I set up my company now that I know that we've got these products and all of these different postings, and also you understand all the things that you can take advantage of, whether you do or not. That's the next level, so the next evolution. So I'm my books are more like see spot run. So rather than,
I guess that you must have had some practice on trying to respond to. I can assume that some of the critique of your product, your books, has been that they are too much how and not as much why. But you got some practice on it, and what you're saying, it makes perfect sense. AX has this theme and the way it works, that it's recognizable throughout the modules, even though there are some slight differences between them. But yeah,
and it's and if again talking about sort of bringing your ego down a lot of notches when you see all the comments and on the books, then I had one guy say, I knew all this, and I was thinking, well, why did you buy the book?
Yeah, we had our first dislike last week. Our first dislike of a video last week. It was a heartfelt, wrenching moment to see this thumb down on a video, and I've dived down and I found out it was from the UK. So that's as close as I got. So I would think there would be more, but let's. Feel free. If you don't like an episode, tell us why.
or if you really don't like it, don't watch it.
Oh, yeah.
No one's putting a gun to your head to force you to watch it.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I do spam a lot.
So, but it boils down to what you said earlier, is that sometimes it's okay to bring out content, because there are people who wants to hear, see, and learn and read and find it interesting anyway, even though it might not be perfect, if there's anything such as perfect.
Yeah, and something that I tell all of the if I meet a consultant that's just starting, because I went. It was about a month, maybe 2 months ago. I did a boot camp for college students that they were just graduating, and they went down to one of the universities down in Florida, and then we did a week teaching them dynamics, and just to partly to get them familiar with it. Another one was partly to make sure that they know dynamics before they know some of the other ERP products, so that we can start them off. And it was interesting. It was hard for them, and because they didn't have a lot of the base understanding, but they got through it. I said to them that, just suck it up and let it wash over you, and then eventually it'll sort of come true, or you'll sort of start to understand it. You need to get to that critical mass. But then also, I think for anyone who's starting off and doing consulting, and if you're just learning dynamics, then that's actually the best time to go out and start writing about it or blogging about it, because there are a lot of blog posts out there which are talking about all the cool things that you can do in the bells and whistles, but again, they're like the 200 level or the 300 level, and there's more people buying dynamics that haven't ever seen it before, and they're looking for the basic things. And if as you're learning the system yourself as a consultant or even as a customer, you have a really good perspective on what you need to learn as you go through it. So for anyone who's wants to go out and blog or write something or create something or create videos or task guides, there's never something that's too simple, because there's always people. If you learn something and you go, oh, that's pretty cool, I don't know that, then there's probably a whole slew of other people that don't know it, and they should, and sharing that information out is what is a good thing for anyone to do. So it's and also then like for all of us, going out and creating the brand and creating content and sharing it out, it's an important thing to do, to give back to the community. So anyway.
So those students, and by the way, we're doing Microsoft University. Oxdata is doing the Microsoft University, and Fredrik is actually one of the teachers there. But I had a question before he starts rambling about that. Those students you said they were struggling. Did you get a feeling what they were struggling with?
Well, we started off with the hardest thing. We started off with the ledger. And we weren't setting it up, but we were talking about it and then talking about journals. And they understood the business background. They were business majors, so they understood the ledger and they understood how things worked. But because it was and it was on 365, so it was for the first day they struggled sort of learning how the system worked. Like we said, it's the feel of the system, and you start putting things together. And we could have jumped in and we could have done the fun stuff like creating orders and all that stuff, but it wouldn't have been useful to them, because under the nuts and bolts are the more important things than the final sales order or invoice being created. So the first day we got feedback and they said, oh, it was hard. And we said, well, just wait. You've got 4 more days of this. So suck it up.
Right.
And then, but I said, it's going to get easier. And then on the second day, they said, yeah, it's a little bit easier. I was sort of starting to understand it. On the third day, then they were rocking and rolling and they were moving through. So it's that learning curve that you need to get past, or that hump, so, where that you need to sort of power on through and learn. And again, we've all gone through it, as with all of us at one point learning dynamics that may have been earlier on, may have been later like me, but you have to just keep on working through it. And if the students get discouraged, then you just say, this isn't it's not easy what they're trying to learn. We've been talking about how dynamics should be easy, but it's learning how a business system or an ERP system works is a hard thing to get a grasp of, but it's a very important skill to have.
So, I mean, is it like the functionality, the way it's set up, or how intuitive the UI is? Because I remember the first time I saw AX, that was AX4 in 2009. And to me, for example, the way the UI had the grid, you had like this tabbed user interface, and the first tab had a grid. And the second tab, all the other tabs were containing data on the rows selected on the grid. And for me, that was not particularly intuitive. So, I mean, you get this first impression of a product and then a system, and then you have to sort of get used to it before it just, now when I see it, I immediately understand how it works. So I guess, yeah.
The thing that I start off with when I do the training is it's kind of like, I do like application theory 101. It's like, what is an application? And this is how it works, and you have data and you have forms, and that's how you work with an application. And you have some business logic that states if you're allowed to do something, and if something happens, then something else should happen. And then we went through just the user interface of the product, and this is how they meant it to work. And there's buttons up here, and there's functionality down here, and here are the fields that you want to address to the records, and these are based on tables, and tables are based on this and that, and forms are, and then you can dive deeper in and say forms are based on queries, and that is why you can't pull this field in here. You can't have any field that you want. You have to be in the query. So there are limits, and then so there's a sort of like a progression that you go through just to learn how the application works, and then you can understand and go into the subject matter and say, this is financials, and this is how you set it up, and is this what you want to work with, right? Because the thing about Microsoft University, that it starts off, you have, I think it's 6 weeks, and they come directly from the school, or at least the ones that we have, they come directly from school. So they're young, educated people. They have either a bachelor or a master's degree in some type of either logistics or finance and things like that. And then they come in, and they're going to be certified on the for Dynamics 365 for finance and operations, financials and trade and distribution, I think it's called now. Yeah, they're going to do both of those exams. I was like, that took me 4 years, but let's give it a go. So until you kind of on a level where you can sit down and just, well, I know every question in this test. It's this case, I've been in this scenario, so I can answer this question. But it's a lot of information to put in. Luckily, they're young, and we can mold them to what they want. But I use the whole day just to talk about what they're going to work with, and how the everyday of a consultant actually is, and what they're going to work with, and not going to understand what they're going to work with at least for the next 2 years. And then it suddenly comes as a shock. It's like, what is it? Okay, now I'm suddenly getting, this is what it's all about. So a funny story sort of on that line. So when I first started working with Dynamics, my boss Larry said, "Oh, you need to sit down with this guy, Doug Myslinski."
and he'd been consulting forever, and he said, and he'll give you a good overview of the system and teach you how it worked. And he went through it so fast, and I was going, oh my God, my head was swimming. And I knew how ERP systems worked, but I was going through that. And honest to God, it was maybe like a year later, I was doing something, and I went, oh, that's what Doug meant.
Yeah. Isn't that what education is all about? It's not real life experience, but you have sort of like these hooks that when you get into a situation, it's like, oh, that's what they meant when they taught me that. That's what they were talking about. I remember having the same understanding, sinus and cosinus, and how that relates to a generator generating electricity. And I had we've learned that early on, and suddenly we were in. I took a more advanced math class where we learned about these things, and suddenly oh, that's how that works. And suddenly it's like everything fell into place. And I won't forget that. That's basically a core part of me now. Understanding like generator theories and stuff like that. So remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe that's a more important thing to tell people, that you're not going to understand everything right away. And as you're teaching people the things, it's not you're going to learn a lot of different things, and they all should be reasonably useful, but you're not going to understand what they all mean necessarily right away, because you need the practical experience, you need the working knowledge or the hands-on, as opposed to just the theory that you're working through. Because I was a consultant for a couple of years, and I was a developer for like 9 months too. So before that, and I went out and we were doing an implementation, and I was nearly right out of university, and I was doing all this coding and doing all these changes, and then we went live. And they said, "Oh, well, you need that." They'd been asking for a mod, and we pushed it down to the bottom of the list. And then we went live and had to. We needed people to help ship out products, and so I went down there to help. And I was working through the system. I'd never really actually typed in a real transaction, only test transactions. And then I realized what they meant, where this was just what we were making them do was like just torture. It was like we were just poking needles into them all the time, every time they had to run through the shipping transaction. So I went in the back and I fixed it. And but it's you don't understand until you actually you're out there doing the things, and especially what an ERP system does. It does a lot of things and it helps a lot of people, but again, there's a difference between theory and actually going out and doing stuff and having the hands-on and getting the muscle memory and or the bruises sometimes from doing transactions.
Yeah, because the business process doesn't always relate to the business logic. So you go in and say, well, I have a business process and it's this and that. Well, we have a button for that, and just press that one, fill out this form, go to that form, go back, and then just push that button, and then you have some. But that's kind of not how it actually works in real life, because we do some other things in between here, and I'm not always in front of the computer doing that. So but hey, it works in the system if you're not physically on the floor doing the execution of the work that you're going to do. So it is getting that level of understanding how to implement a system and how business processes actually work is only experienced through being in a project and working with customers. Yeah. So coming back to that customers, because you as you said earlier, you worked on the partner channel, but then you moved in and now you're working for Microsoft. But what do you do at Microsoft?
So it's funny. I'm actually doing exactly the same thing as I was doing before. Just I moved up a level. So when I was working, so I worked for 6 years at the partner level for two different partners, and I learned a lot from one. One was in the food industry, and one was in the distribution industry. So I learned a lot along the way about the product, especially the first one because I was learning it. But I was always in pre-sale, so I was always just doing demos and setting up things and selling, and not as a salesman, but just as a sort of like as a demo dolly, or to go out there and show off our wares. But then so I got the opportunity to move to Microsoft, and so here at Microsoft I've got the role that I have as a TSP, so a technical solution professional, not a professor like some people say, but which is funny. So I'm still, and there's a whole slew of us, and we're broken out by regions, and a lot of us have different specialties along the way. But I'm still doing the same thing. So I help with the demonstrations. But the interesting thing is that the way that Microsoft works, Microsoft never really sells directly to the customers. It's always through partners or through the partner channel. And the partners have people like me, or like what I used to be, but they're learning the new products just like I was along the way. And my role, and also all of the other TSP folks at Microsoft, it's more to support the partners. So it's sometimes their partners have gaps. They may be weak on, although they've got consultants that know financials, then they may be weak on financials from a demo standpoint. They've got someone who can go out and do the distribution or the inventory, and that's what they focus on. So someone comes out and then from Microsoft or TSP, and they can help with that. Or I worked with one of the Microsoft TSPs when I was on the partner channel, Don Lees, and he always did the distribution and the warehouse management. And we were weak on that because it was a new thing for us. But he had the time, and he invested in that, so he'd help doing those presentations for the partners. So again, that's what I do. But the other thing is that coming from the partner channel, I've got an appreciation what it's like to go out and be selling Dynamics down at that level to the customers, and how hard it is to get sometimes the information about the new features along the way. And I'm lucky enough that I don't get new features really any quicker than the partners, but I do have the ability to dive into it and learn it. And what I also do is now, sort of, since I've got this publishing engine or this technique that I use to create things, then I can pass that down to the partners and educate them more, and also blog about it. I never blog about anything that's confidential, but because otherwise I'd lose my job quickly. But it gives me the chance to empower the partners and make them better, because in the end it's going to help Microsoft, and it's going to help us all in the long term. So I do demos, but it's at sort of like a higher level, because all the partners they do a lot of the selling themselves, but there's the gaps which they just need a body to fill. And also sometimes they'd just like to have someone from Microsoft there helping along the way. And then there's other things that now I can work with the product management group a lot closer, and sort of maybe get answers to things that everyone's asking about, like the common data service or the integration platform or all these things, because it's easier for me to get in contact with that group and nag them, because I do have to. I'm not. I still have to nag a lot to get an answer, but it's easier than if you're a partner trying to contact the product managers as well, because it's hard if they get inundated with a lot of requests. So it's a really it's a really good position. I like it. I like what I'm doing, and also, like I said right at the beginning, I'm pretty much doing exactly the same thing that I was doing at the partner level. I just changed companies and went to Microsoft, and then just sort of kept on doing the same thing, which is better than some of the other TSPs, because they've got different experience. Maybe they came from Oracle, or they came from SAP, or some other, or Infor, or some other partner, or some other competitor. Then they've got the double problem. They need to learn Dynamics. So again, I was lucky that I had all this knowledge, and I could just sort of jump over and sort of do things that way.
So basically, they're asking you for your books.
now let's state this. All of the books that I create are on my hardware, on my time. So there's Microsoft's got a department, LCA, which is legal, and if you get a call from legal, then you're in trouble. So that was one thing that I ironed out, that the books are sort of over here and separated out. So that's a good thing. But also, anyone coming to Microsoft, if you've got this IP or this thing, these resources that come with you, then Microsoft's got a really good policy on that. They've actually got a moonlighting policy, and anything, as long as it's not confidential information, and as long as you're not sharing information that you shouldn't, and as long as you do it offline, off the Microsoft time and off the Microsoft equipment, then really they've got no problem with it, and they encourage it too.
Yeah, so Microsoft is probably one of the few companies that does that. If you go to like Apple or maybe Google within the business, but if you look at what Apple does, is just close everything in, and Microsoft is generally an open company where the employees can still kind of be enthusiastic within the community, which I find really encouraging. Yeah,
and it's the excitement that I think is contagious. Yep. And if you sort of stub that excitement, then people, then it's just it's not helpful for anyone, and you can get a lot more from it by having people do extra promotion, and as long as it's true, then no one really has a problem with it. So
yeah. So you're basically the pre-sales hallelujah that the partners bring in when they really want to wow a customer. They say, well, we'll get somebody from Microsoft to come out and they'll do a demo. And
yeah. They may not bring in me for that job, but
of course they would. It's like you're kind of like a minor celebrity at least within this small niche that we have for the old AX.
Yeah, and now with Dynamics, there's so much more that all of us can work through. There's it's not just ERP that we're working, where there's other things, IoT, Internet of Things, there's BI, there's Power Apps and Flow for creating other applications. You can go old school with SharePoint and do cool things there. You can do development, you can use create your own apps, you can do Visual Studio, you can do all of these things, and that's what makes it exciting. It's not just journal entries and shipping out products. You can really paint a really good vision, and a lot of the things everyone has. So it's not going to cost people a lot, apart from just investing in it and sort of understanding what you can do. And that's really so the vision and painting of that I think is the important thing for everyone to do.
Yeah, and so I think that just the ecosystem is that much richer now with the Dynamics 365. So do you do demos on CRM and the integrations, or is that customer engagement, which is basically the name for it now?
Yeah, and I'm glad that they did that they put the customer engagement on the end, because it really irked me every time they said Dynamics 365 and they meant CRM.
Don't get me started. No. I just tweeted about it last week. It's like, I downloaded, there's a Dynamics 365 app for mobile. I was like, okay, what's this? And it's CRM.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So, but yeah, for years I always had CRM and I could show it, and actually I use CRM myself. I've got my own one user license that's out there, and which is really interesting because you can sign up for a team member license for CRM personally and put it on your Office 365 subscription, and for $10 a month you can get CRM. So, but anyway, it's cheap, yeah. But it's so I always showed it, but again, the thing that was hard was the integration, because there was integration with 2012, but it sort of it worked. But a lot of people use Scribe, and then with Dynamics 365 Story, the whole idea or whole premise is the one system and the integrated system. And now with the integration being out there with the project, so now we can synchronize accounts and contacts and products and quotes and orders and invoices, and I think I said products. And now you can have the information moving between CRM and one sort of nice view. Then for me, and I think for everyone now that's working with Dynamics, it's going to be a change, because you're going to need, from the operations side, you should really be reasonably well versed in CRM or customer engagement, because it's going to be there's a lot of tools in there that are a lot better than there are in operations. But then again, there's a lot of things within operations that are a lot better than CRM, like pricing and invoicing and sales and all these other things.
And one thing that I kind of want to ask you about, how would you do delivery promising when you're in CRM? Like, you can't do ATP or CTP through the CRM, and I don't think the integration at this point is going to cover that. Have an idea how it's going to solve that?
Yeah, because the way that the flow works now with the integration is that all of the operational side, all the promising, all the pricing, all the discounts, all the tax, everything is done in operations. Mm-hmm. So you use CRM or customer engagement to go out and track the opportunities, track the leads, because there's a whole slew of tools in there that help along the way. And then you'd create a quote, and then when the quote gets activated, then it actually moves down to operations. This is going to be something that's a little bit different for us, because a lot of times we don't use quotes on the operations side. It's always just sales orders. But if you've got the sales side, then the quotes move down, and then those quotes then get moved. Then you can go out and convert that to an order, and then have the promises. You can have ATP. You can have CTP if you want to. You can use everything that's built into operations. You can use.
But you want to do that at quoting level. I think order promising is also a part of the quote, right? So if you want to, you can get it in. Hang on, do you want it?
Yeah,
then when you approve it, you can do order promising.
Yeah, but what you're doing when you activate the quote is you just say this is a quote that someone needs to work on, and then because it goes down and becomes a quote within operations.
Oh, I thought it was going to be at the order. Okay, so if it's a quote, we're done.
All right.
Mystery.
So it's a quote. Yeah. But some people sometimes it's a little bit counterintuitive, because some people are wanting it to go within CRM to go from the opportunity to the quote, then get converted to a sales order within CRM. And then there's actually no functionality there like promising or ATP or anything like that. So it's sort of like that's where you get stuck, because you actually can't place an order if you don't have all of these other things in there. Right. So now if it goes down to becomes a quote, the back office works on the quote, firms it up, converts it to an order, everything flows through, and then when it becomes an order, then that order will move up to CRM, but it won't. The order is managed through operations, and that seems to be a good flow. It won't. Some people may scratch their heads a little bit about it because they want the order to be created in CRM, and that's just how it is.
The CDS team on the previous podcast, they did actually show a slide of how that that works between the systems, between CRM and operations.
And there's going to be more of these block diagrams, right, for different modules now. They talked about. Go watch the CDS podcast. It's awesome. We did it last week, so check it out.
Because they're working on the bidirectional sync, and that's going to be a big thing.
That's where I'm going to put. I'm pointing towards. If you want to go to CDS podcast, if it's on YouTube, you can click here. On top of Tommy's head, right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, on the other way.
No,
don't.
No. Well, this is going to be awesome for the guys listening. It's like us pointing on camera.
What are they talking about? We are pointing. We are pointing at the video. You have to watch the video.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and it's still new. So there's, I think there's going to be a lot of good things coming out. They're working really hard. So, but I won't. All I do is I nag the CDS team to work out how to get all this stuff set up, and so I'll let them worry about the hard stuff because I've got an easy job. So.
Well, one of the things that Sabine said, and I find that interesting, is that he said that they are on the same journey. They are a little bit ahead of us though, but they are on the journey, and nothing is completely settled. So they are open for feedback and engagement, and to drive this in the right direction.
Yeah, and that's a really nice thing about the product management group at Microsoft. They are really open for. They're trying to do the right thing, and what they create then goes out to the field, and then maybe they change direction or they tweak it and make changes. But they're open to it. They want to make the right product. And they want to make a product that works, and people just need to. Again, roll with it, work with it, and a lot of times I hear things like for the common data service, people say, it's not ready for prime time. It won't handle 20 gazillion records that we need to put into it, and it's,
as I said last week, it will.
Yeah, that may be true, but work with it because it's going to get better. Yeah. Just like Power BI. Power BI has been getting better and better and better and better almost every month, and it's been around for quite a while. But there's still things that are coming out of there that are really cool, and a lot of changes. I was really excited when the snap to grid function came in, and
yeah,
because I'm a little bit OCD about having all of my charts line up, and. So, but again, Common Data Service and Flow, and they're changing, and they're changing really rapidly. I think with Flow, I stumbled on the fact that you can have they'll show you all the functions now, all the expressions, so you don't have to go and sort of search for them on other websites, and it gives you. And they just added that, and maybe a month ago. So people need to. Work with these things because they're only going to get better, and if you wait too long, then you'll be left behind.
Yeah, like the thing you say with Power BI. One of the things I kind of keep up to date is watch these what's new every week or every month that comes out, and if you do that, you get into it and you can use these cool features. But if you start from scratch, like there's so many things that you have to kind of get into, and it's just watching these videos. And as you said, and as we talked with the guys on the CDS team, the CDS that came out when Dynamics 365 was launched was kind of half baked, and the story wasn't there. They obviously were working on something, and then they had the spring release, and the product just the leap from the first iteration to the next iteration is just extremely big, and then I'm just looking forward to looking at what's the next function that they're going to do now. They're going to, if they have the same progression that they have from the initial release to what they have now, it's going to be pretty good.
Because did they talk the the things that they're looking at. I don't think this is a state secret, but like the virtual entities and where the tables will actually be from operations and CRM inside of the common data service rather than being sort of synchronized, then the things that they're working on, they're really, really cool features and hard things to do too. So, but
they got some smart guys there, like
Lance. And if you ever get to meet Pratap, I think he's one of the product managers. He's like super hyped over Power Apps and really energetic about it, almost to the point of being too energetic. But it's but they're excited about these things, and everyone else should be too. So Microsoft, I think, is a pretty cool company. They're doing some really neat stuff.
Yeah, it is. I'm a real Microsoft fanboy.
It's going to be interesting to see. I hope to get to be there at the next Dynamics 365 technical conference or whatever they're going to call it, because I think by then it's like you said, the leap, the last 6 months and the 6 months ahead of us is going to do a lot of changes. On a side note, I heard you refer to the products as CRM and operations. Thinking about how they now call it finance and operations, the product. I was thinking about
enterprise edition.
Enterprise edition, yeah. But the point is they put finance ahead of operations, and I think maybe the reason they did that is because everybody was starting to get used to tagging it as D3FO, because we'd call it Dynamics 365 for operations. And now we can reuse that tag.
Yeah, which is the silver version of C3PO. So
yeah, right. Yeah, I said you can't say it like D3F. You have to say like D3FO. You can't say it. Yeah, D3FO. It's D3FO.
Although the big question on everyone's lips is how do they shorten the name? Because Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Enterprise Edition. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but at least there's a distinction between Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations Business Edition.
I made a hotkey on my keyboard because I'm writing a quote to I'm doing a RFQ to a customer, and I actually have a shortcut in Word now for entering, which I have like a combination. And then it writes out Dynamics 365, Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Enterprise Edition. Yeah. I'm not going to write that every time I'm referring to the product, but now I can just.
What I do is I just go. I mention it the first time, and then put brackets. The product formerly known as.
Yeah. It could have been Works. It could have been Dynamics ERP. Then it would be DERP.
There we go. Is that some sort of Nordish slang? I don't know.
Derp. No, but you refer to operations. I've heard more and more Microsoft employees do the same thing.
But I call it operations because it was Dynamics 365 for operations, and that I think we're trying to beat that old habit out of me, but it's because also I always say CRM instead of customer engagement, but then CRM's got sales and field service on it as well. It's as long as people know what you're talking about, I think it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Shout out to Kelly, who actually coined the D3FO hashtag on Twitter. We're gonna have her on. Okay. Just
Kelly Kane.
Kelly Kane. We're booked. Next podcast is going to be with her and Lindsay Garcia, who is also very active in the AXUG community.
And Kelly's a new MVP too.
Yes, he is. Yes. Another thing that I kind of wanted to, because Microsoft is changing and you're kind of in the middle of it. There's been a lot of movement within the sales because they're doing this reorganization within the one channel partner. Can you kind of tell us, how's that like affecting your day? You're gonna work within different teams now, or is it just one industry focus?
For me, the biggest change is that I'm working with a whole slew more salespeople, because it used to be that there was CRM and then there was operations, or CRM and finance and operations, and there very few times was there overlap between the opportunities, although there could have been, but that was partly because of the way that that AX was sold and the way that CRM was sold. It was sometimes too expensive to actually buy them both, and now with the new model and the new pricing, it's a lot easier. But the one channel is, from my standpoint, the CRM salespeople are asking more questions because they've got resources now, and also where on the operations side now we can bring in CRM people and we can really show the holistic view along with that. And there's also more with the one channel, because there's Azure resources, there's Azure and machine learning, and then the commercial side, which is really part of the individual organizations. For me, not a lot really changed, because I'm still just working in the same region. I'm doing the same things with just some more people that I'm working with, but the regions changed as well. So for me, I'm in Atlanta, which is eastern US, but the east coast of the US is broken up into two. There's northeast and southeast now, but partly that's because there's more salespeople, so they sort of rearranged it that way. So it was the companies that I work with will be more regional, but that's the only major change. It's still something that we're all sort of working through, but having a more of a holistic approach to what you're trying to provide for the customer, I think is a smarter thing than just focusing on part of the company, because again, your dynamics itself is, if you should give people the right tool for the right job. And
if it's SharePoint
in the past,
then hey,
yeah.
Right.
Or if you had the choice of just selling Dynamics and then letting Dynamics AX, and then they use the sales and marketing module and sort of like an okay campaign management system, or you can sell them the Dynamics 365 product, and then salespeople can use CRM, which they like to use, they're supposed to use, and then the operations side can have all the things that they need, like that we talked about earlier on around the ordering. Then that's a smarter thing, and it'll be a better solution for the customer. And in the end, it's we're delivering solutions. I don't want to say we're selling solutions, we're delivering solutions, and that's the more important thing. Yeah. And then being able to have people like on the Azure team, the machine learning, to go out and help the infrastructure, help the IT group do other things, then that's even better. So that's the one channel sort of approach, and we'll see. It should be a lot more successful and bring the different divisions of Microsoft together for really creating better solutions.
Yeah, I think the reorganization is going to be it's going to be tough for some partners who are smaller, but the bigger partner is going to really grow and have a lot more opportunities and an easier way through Microsoft handling this. But It's the future.
But also you're seeing the products being split up more now. They're pulling out parts of what used to be an eggs. It's now being a separate product with talent and everything. So you're gonna have all of these different products, I guess.
Yeah, and so like talent and retail, and but it's more like, the way I see that is talent's a little bit different, because talent is more built on the common data service and for the back-end database, and also it's more designed for on sort of acquiring people, and then there's a lot more interaction with applicants and giving them apps and things like that. But if you look at CRM has been broken out this way for a while, because you have CRM has the sales portion, customer service, field service, and then the PSA module. So, but they're really all the same CRM. It's one database for all of those applications. Just you if you want to buy field service, you can buy that separately. And so that's, and I'm no expert on what the underlying architecture is going to be in the end. I've learned really quickly not to pontificate on how something is, because I've got no idea. But
I don't think the ones that are working on it, or even the ones that are strategizing on it at Microsoft, knows what it's going to be in the end, because it's changing.
It's fluid. So, but
yeah,
but to be able to deliver just a financial system or just a retail system, you can sort of do the retail already, then it's really more of a pricing mechanism rather than necessarily too much of an architectural change, because it means that if you don't want manufacturing, then you don't pay for that. You just get a team member, or you just get the licenses for the financials, and then maybe you add on the other ones later on. So, because again, the tiered pricing within CRM, if you get the individual modules, then they're not as expensive as the full license within. So that may be the plan. We'll see. So you'll probably know just around about the same time that I do.
Yeah, when they figure it out. Well, that is awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We are practically out of time, and thanks for the guys who's joined us on YouTube. We actually streamed this one live on YouTube. That is awesome. Our first actual podcast that we streamed. Yeah,
you streamed this one on YouTube. I didn't know that.
No,
that's
we had like 8.
This is the way it works. So
yeah, we had like eight viewers at the most. Thank you to shout out to the guys in the forum who actually wrote something here, like Jens Sigurd Christensen and Klaus de Forge.
Klaus is in XMP.
Oh yeah, he's in here watching and listening. That's awesome. Thank you, Klaus, for joining. And next one is going to be all about the ladies. We have Kelly Kane, who I'm really enthusiastic about talking. So it's more about the customer side, because both Kelly and
while you're thinking about her name, we're going to hand out hundreds of kilos of peanut butter and jelly.
What?
As part of the podcast.
No, we're not.
Provided by Kelly.
And guns. No, by Magpul. Because they work at Magpul and at some food company with peanut butter. Is that what she's?
Yeah, I believe so.
All right, awesome. So stay tuned for our next podcast. It's going to be in the mid of. It's going to be 2 or 3 weeks from now. So thank you so much, Murray, for coming in here. And if you're watching us, we have a YouTube channel. We'd love for you to subscribe there, but you can also find all of our podcasts on the podcast aggregation apps like iTunes. If you go in there and search for Dynamics Podcast, all good food, says Jens. Thank you very much. That's where Kelly works. Perfect. So yeah. Stay tuned next week. Next week for the next podcast. And join our YouTube channel. And don't forget to push that bell. You know, the bell up there, so you get notifications. And then you'll also suddenly we'll pop up and have a live stream. So we're doing this either Tuesday or Wednesdays, somewhere between like 2000 hours CET. So we're on European time. So Central European time, about 8 o'clock in the evening. Thank you very much, Murray, and hope to talk to you soon. And go buy Murray's books. They're awesome.
Buy more books.
Buy more books. Okay, great. Bye.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.